Hey there everyone, Seb here with a look at the PC release of AdventureQuest 8-bit, Dungeons and Doomknights, a repackaged digital release of the NES Homebrew from 2022. A Steam key was provided for review. Now AdventureQuest probably needs little introduction. The franchise saw its humble beginnings back in 2002, and Artix Entertainment has made quite a name for itself with their many browser and mobile RPGs since. It's also a company notorious for spreading itself way too thin over different projects. At its helm stands Adam Bond, who is
Do we have any more windows?
yeah, quite the character. At some point he decided he also wanted to make an NES game, so they put together a team and got to work, resulting in a physical release for the NES in 2022. I've heard good things about the game, but never actually tried it for myself. So this new release was a great opportunity to check the game out. The game describes itself as a Zeldavania, and that's pretty accurate. You go through both top-down and side-scrolling screens and you build up necessary skills to get rid of ever-escalating obstacles, as an axe that can chop rocks obviously can't hack apart blocks of ice. Such nonsensical logic is kind of by design in this game. One thing you want to keep in mind is that Artix is always very heavy on referential and tongue-in-cheek humor. So you'll need to be in the mood to stomach a lot of fake NES mistranslations and mentions of dangerous alone times in other castles during curse nights and similar tropes. As such, the story is bare bones and mainly a vessel to tell jokes, which won't be to everyone's taste. I'm not very familiar with the lore of the World of Lore, but could follow along just fine as a standalone game. For fans there will be plenty of familiar faces too, I'm sure. The game did get some chuckles out of me, what can I say? I'm a simple man, I can appreciate princesses kidnapping dragons and holding them at ransom for a change. I especially enjoy the ways the game playfully trolls the player at times. For example, at one point I thought I had bought a house to get a life heart on display in its garden. The thing cost the maximum amount of gold possible, but once inside it became clear that the bastard who sold the place forgot to mention that the garden is sold separately. And apparently even that didn't include the fence, I guess. The game world is pretty big, supposedly over 500 screens, and there is a nice variety of environments and dungeons to traverse. Unfortunately, this is admittedly a bit janky. The sprites are pretty detailed and look great, but they are also huge and I kept getting caught on the environment, which got me killed quite a few times. I also found myself at odds with the hit detection of the game. Even something as simple as chopping up some stationary blocks often needed repositioning. You can also only attack either left or right, which is a bit odd for the top-down sections. Artix's giant axe does have overhead swing though, which is nice. And yes, Artix is a certified paladin, but no, he does not use light magic because reasons, so you'll just have to do with other stuff that you will find along the way. I found most of the skills underwhelming and saw little use for most, mainly using them where required. The exception was the reflect spell, which could be quite handy and also, for some reason, is the only skill that does not require a skull to activate, which functions as the MP in this game. You also get a doggo friend fairly early on who is hilariously the true MVP of the game and who actually gets a game mode all to himself, in which you play the entire game as him instead of Artix. All dialogue is changed in this alternate mode, which is basically a ROM hack, and it is quite hilarious. Another hack like that sees the game changed to black and white and filled with classic film references. A third alternate mode is Pack-a-Din, which is an expansion of one particular Waka Waka screen in the main game into a bigger game mode of itself. There's even two completely different smaller games included in the package, Chrono Knight and Necronancy. The first is a sort of shoot 'em up with amazing sprite work but rather awkward controls. The second is a pretty fun puzzle platformer. All except Necronancy were originally Kickstarter backer rewards. All of these games were made with the help of NES Maker, which is a tool to help make NES development more accessible, I think. I mean, for me it still looks really complicated. But I'm suspecting that this engine might also impose some limitations. For example, a lack of scrolling, which, due to the big sprites and a curious inability to duck, makes the side-scrolling sections in particular feel very cramped. I often exited screens by accident trying to dodge attacks, and that's no fun if you're halfway through delivering some divine axe cleaving upon a boss. Screens also flat out reset when triggering events, such as pulling a lever or killing all foes on certain screens, which is very jarring. Another thing that caused me some annoyance was the bat form, as this is activated automatically and it's not always clear where exactly. So what can happen is that you jump up and all of a sudden you stay motionless in the air as a bunch of bats, ready to take a fireball to the face. Or faces, I guess. Fortunately, the game also knows how to avoid some of the more common limitations. There is no sprite flicker at all for one, and very little slowdown. I think I only noticed it on like 2 screens or something. It's also very generous towards the player and doesn't punish failure harshly. Upon death, you spawn at the last save point you passed, and those are quite frequent, and better still, no progress is lost at all. The world wraps around, and with plenty of shortcuts via the use of obtained upgrades, traversing the map can be done quickly, so the fact that there is no fast travel system is not a major hindrance. Most enemies are total pushovers too, with a generous stun lock. This even holds true for quite a few bosses, which can be easily rushed down. Some do pose some challenge, though that usually has more to do with the environment. The exception is the secret boss, who is a complete jerk, to put it lightly. The game has a few secrets and optional stuff to do, which is awesome. Especially when you take into consideration that you get the other games and variants, the whole package will keep you entertained for quite some time. The main game alone will take you about 4 to 5 hours first time through, especially if you're prone to getting lost like yours truly. The ease of getting around and minimal penalty upon death make the game a rather easy one. But if publisher Nami Tentou has the balls to add an achievement for a no-hit run, it will no doubt send some hunters into madness. There are no achievements or badges yet, by the way, but one would hope those will be added upon the official release on the 25th of January. Some other things are also strangely absent. For one, there is a language option in the main menu, but this only changes the language of the menus, not the actual game, making it kind of pointless or a really lame joke. There is also no way in the options to change key bindings. With the default keyboard layout they chose, this is near criminal. Even going through the menus on the keyboard is awkward. Selecting an option is space in the main menu, but once the actual game is loaded, you have to press enter instead. WASD is the only way to move anything, even a cursor, and for some unknown reason they decided to map the A button to J and the B button to K, which is reversed from an NES controller, but even worse, also reversed from the order it's displayed on screen. In short, use a controller and hope it defaults to some good mapping. There are some added graphical options as arguable enhancements like different color palettes, a CRT filter, or you can alter the aspect ratio if you are a true degenerate. Seriously, we cannot be friends anymore if you set this to 16:9, okay? Additionally, you also get a digital version of the map, manual and their issue of Pretendo Empower, all of which are pretty cool, though much more impactful as feelies in the full-blown collector's edition of the NES card, of course. You can also listen to the soundtrack, which I didn't talk about at all, did I? Well, I guess that's because I found it kind of forgettable. It does suit the game just fine and there's quite a few different tracks, but none really stand out to me, and that mainly has to do, I think, with the fact that they all are rather short loops, so they become monotonous pretty quickly. All in all, I think this is a great NES homebrew, and I really enjoyed my time with it. However, I feel a little hesitant to give this particular version a hard recommend. The game very much belongs on the NES, and any emulator can remap controls these days. The digital ROM is also somewhat cheaper. You do get the extra variants and games in one go though, and that is a great bonus. I just really hope they will add some quality of life features in a future update. The first week of its release it's supposed to get a 25% discount, bringing the cost very close to that of the digital ROM, making it way more enticing with the bonuses in mind. I also want to stress again that the humor of the game will not be to everyone's liking. You also need to realize that even though you buy this on either Steam or Switch, you are essentially playing a ROM of an NES game. People less familiar with the NES will have a much harder time accepting some of the jankiness of the game. Those who love their NES games, however, will have a fun throwback title on their hands. For anyone who enjoys homebrews for all the systems, the game itself is a must, but most of those will likely already have a physical copy. And that's all from me. How about you? Have you played the game and what are your thoughts? What are some of your favorite homebrews for the NES? Well, in any case, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I thank you very much for watching. Until we meet again in another video, battle on and a muzzle!